We will now have our message from Reverend Jill, a meditation and message from Reverend Jill Campbell.
Thank you. Let's keep in this prayerful state and remember the flute that we just heard as it resonates in both our minds and our hearts. We are so grateful for this gathering together, and thankful for our technology that enables us to do this. If these circumstances happened 50 years ago, we would truly be isolated. But because of technology, we can see each other, we can hear each other, and someday we will again touch each other. In this prayerful state, just bring to mind something that you are so truly grateful for. It's your family, maybe a best friend, or also maybe a furry friend, large or small. Or perhaps it's just the beautiful weather, the bubbling brook, the beautiful lake, and the gorgeous sunsets and sunrises we have here together in our state. As we feel this gratitude, we feel this feeling just welling up inside of us. We feel love, light, serenity fill our hearts and our souls. And just stay in the silence for a moment and feel that welling gratitude. Now, with this full feeling of gratitude, bring something in your minds at this point that maybe isn't setting quite right with you. Maybe it's some harsh words that you had shared with someone. Maybe you weren't focusing on that 6 feet in front of you and came close to someone that you didn't mean to. Maybe it's a car that has stopped running. Or maybe it's just some frustration at being homebound. Now what I ask you to do is take this feeling of frustration or abandonment or discouragement and bring it into light. Bring it into the light and love that we know. And open it up and see something deep inside of it that you can be thankful for. You might have to search for a minute or two to feel that wellingness of gratitude that you felt in the previous example. But just like a butterfly engulfed in that cocoon, that butterfly didn't stop fighting. That butterfly kept struggling to find the beauty within. As you do so, envision with me that butterfly crawling out of that cocoon, spreading its beautiful wings, warming in the sunlight, and then flying so beautifully into the sunset. Everything we have, we are so grateful for. And we just say thank you. Thank you, God, for this magnificent world. And thank you for that beautiful butterfly that we can find in every situation. We just need to wait, watch, and be in awe and wonder. And so it is. Amen. I have always been fascinated by the Bible. I read the Bible as a child. I grew up with the Bible. But in all of my schooling and my learning, I've learned so much about it. First off, I've learned that it wasn't just one writer. It was many writers. They have the Yahwist, they have the Elohist, the Deuteronomist, the priestly writer, and my favorite is the redactor. The redactor just sat around and tried to join all these stories together and make complete sentences with them. The Bible has been actually distributed in 50 different versions of English. Many of the stories that we read in Genesis today actually were stories handed down decade, century to century with words of mouth. They actually were stories around the campfire. And then once man was able to write, he captured these. And many of these stories are now in Genesis. What's interesting about a lot of these stories is you can also see some of these stories in other ancient writings. The golden rule is found in all the religions, including Christianity. The Bible is about people seeking relationships with God. And what we do in our teachings is we try to look for a deeper meaning in those stories. The Gospels are no different. In fact, did you know that the order of the Bible stories in the New Testament are not in chronological order? In fact, the letters that you see, like Paul writing to the Galatians and the Corinthians and things like that, came far before the Gospels. In fact, the 4 Gospels were written 70, 80, even 100 years after Jesus had already been crucified and passed away. They too were like Genesis. They were stories that people kept telling and telling, and they couldn't die. They were so important. They were so important that finally Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John put them in writing. But as any author writes a book, there is some perspective of that author and some points that the author is trying to make. Well, the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000 is actually found in all 4 Gospels, which is different than some of the stories which you only find in one of the Gospels or another. They're in Matthew chapter 15, Mark chapter 6, Luke chapter 9, and John chapter 6. So today I'd like to read the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. I'm going to be reading from Luke chapter 9, starting with verse 10. When the apostles returned, they reported to Jesus what they had done. Then he took with them and with him, and they drew themselves to the town of Bethsaida. But the crowds learned about it and followed him. He welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God, and he healed those that needed healing. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, "Send the crowd away so they can go to surrounding villages and find something to eat, and then go to this remote place here." But Jesus replied, "We need to give them something to eat." But they said, "We only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Unless we go buy some food, there's not going to be enough for the crowd. There's about 5,000 men and women and children out there." But he said to his disciples, have them sit down in groups of about 50. The disciples did so, and everyone sat down. So then what did Jesus do? He took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and he put them up to heaven, and he gave thanks. He gave thanks for that food when he knew there was no way it was going to feed 5,000. Then he gave to the disciples the food and distributed to the people. They all ate. They all were satisfied. And then after, there was still 12 baskets left. This is such an attitude of gratitude. So in the Bible, places have meanings. So Bethesda is about higher thoughts. So Jesus went to a place, I always say he was prayed up, but he went to a place of higher thoughts and said, okay, I need to be thankful. 5 loaves of bread represent the senses, and 2 fish represents duality. But Jesus, he did not let the obvious get to him. He said, let's bless it and feed it. And he fed 5,000 people. So what I did this week is I created a gratitude list. And I actually want you to do the same this week. Now, what I did is I started it out on a Post-it. That was a total mistake. I had to get a bigger piece of paper because I had so much to be thankful for. So what's interesting about these times is it's really pushing families together. I saw this joke, it was funny. Actually, someone at work shared it with me. And this person was exposed to the virus. And they said, you know, you have 2 options. They said, first, you can spend the quarantine time with your wife and your lovely child. And the first thing out of his mouth is, what's option B? He didn't want to be isolated with his family. But I think that families are so important. And I talk to people in my job all over the country. I called a tech support number this week to help me out on something. And it was so cool because he answered the phone and you could hear his kids in the background. And I was just delighted that he was still answering the phone to help me with my problem, but he was at home with his family. When I was working at what I call corporate America now, I had to almost pretend that I wasn't a mother and I didn't have a family, which was so sad. We just had to, wear our suits at first, and then things got casual and we finally wore jeans. But it was almost as if we had 2 lives, one at work and one at home, when families are so important. So this virus has really forced families to be together. Then I heard our platform person this morning talk about traffic. And I agree, I can't even hardly drive in Phoenix anymore. I've been up here in Lakeside, Arizona for 5 years and I just love it. But it's funny because they show pictures and there's nobody on that freeway. I was thinking of all those years that I actually drove to work, stopping, starting, going 2 feet, stopping, starting, and going 2 feet. So even these people that have to go into the office, what a blessing with no traffic. I just love to go down there one morning and pretend I was commuting and just experience that. Another gratitude is the pollution. Because we're not driving, we have actually cleared the pollution in so many of our cities. I think one of the outcomes after the virus is over is I think they're going to encourage more telecommuting and more mass transit to actually respect this Mother Earth, this beautiful place that we live. Community. I have seen people come out in so many ways. Your beautiful spiritual community in Payson, just sharing each other on Sunday mornings and your coffees. Wow, community. At our church, we even set up sewing machines 6 feet apart and made masks so that people would have enough masks and feel safe. I meet with my prayer chaplains every Saturday morning for a half an hour, and they just check in. I now wonder why I never did that before, and I'll continue to do it. It touches my heart to be able to connect with them. I talked about awareness. I think we're more aware of our environment. And I think we're also, some people are hoarding, but I think someone had said that earlier. There's no one here that's in World War I and II where rationing was really strong. It's funny, it's a toilet paper story, but I ordered some toilet paper 2 months ago when the shortage had just started. And it arrived in my mail finally yesterday. And I couldn't believe it, because on the line, if you don't read things, you don't know what you're getting. Those toilet paper rolls were about that small. I don't even know where they came from. But there'd be a blessing if you didn't have any other toilet paper. The other thing is kindness. I went to Circle K on Friday, and I was just getting a sandwich. I forgot. I just didn't take time to make my lunch. And we were standing 6 feet apart, right? Well, ahead of me was a teacher, and she was buying a drink. And those Circle K employees had coupons and would not let her pay for her drink. I was just so appalled that people are really coming out in beautiful ways. Then I had something happen to me yesterday. My older dog who's staying with us is actually my daughter's dog, and she needed to have her toenails clipped. So I went into PetSense here in Show Low and walked in. And first off, I was amazed that she even invited me in. You know, I thought she was just going to take my dog and run. So she invites me in, and we talk and things like that. And she was so kind, and we talked about the times. And then when she was done, she said, I said, well, I need to take this to the cash register. She said, no, it's on me. I said, what? You're going to just clip my dog's toenails for nothing? And so anyway, I did give her a tip, but I told her, I said, I'm just so, I actually started to cry. I just couldn't believe that somebody was so kind. So what do you have to be grateful for? There's so much. I know some of us don't like country music, but you know what Willie Nelson said? He said, when I started counting my blessings, that's when my whole life turned around. Just counting your blessings. I have a gratitude journal next to my bed. And before I go to bed every night, even if it's been a difficult day, I sit down and I start writing what I'm grateful for. When the kids were growing up, we would light a candle when they would come home. And even though they had these horrible days, I'd always tell them to look at the other person's perspective, which they got upset with me. But before it was over, I would make each one of them say something they were thankful for. And sometimes if it's a rough day, that takes a while. So what are you thankful for? It reminds me of Unity's third principle. We definitely believe that our thoughts are things. And if we change one thought at a time, we can make a difference. One thought can make a world of difference. I was reading some articles on the internet. I know that's all what we do anymore. I think they have a term for that as well. But you got to be careful what you read because there's some negative out there. But I was reading about the history of a handshake and how it goes back to the beginning of time. And it was just binding two people together. And the person that was writing the article suggested that maybe we don't shake hands anymore. I'm sorry, I'm not going there. I believe that when it's all over, we will shake hands again. We will meet each other without a mask on our face. We will hug each other. In this time, one of the things that I've realized, how much I need the human touch, how much we all need the human touch. It's important. And we just need to take this time, this moment, and make a list, our gratitude list. Because with an attitude of gratitude, anything's possible. And I hold each and every one of you today in my heart. And I look forward to again being able to meet you in person. As the Daily Word said today, I release all that does not contribute to my highest good. Just as Jesus released that thought of lack and limitation, he saw and got abundance. Every possible outcome already exists, including the virus vanishing. We just need to hold in our hearts expectations and anticipation of when we can all get together again. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your blessings. And thank you for your love from your heart. Amen.